Welcome back. It's episode 114 of the Chaos Ball podcast. Welcome back. Things are, the All-Star break's almost here. A respite from Mariners baseball is almost upon us, and that's a positive thing in my eyes. But we're back. We're chatting midst of July, so this episode is trades. This is going to be a lot of trade speculation. It's going to be two parts. That's going to be the second part. First part, temperature check on the team, where they're at, how they've been doing since a fish got dropped in the T-Mobile Park seats, their disastrous trip to the Bronx that just ended in a catastrophic loss to end that series and secure the sweep for the Yankees. But there's some all-stars that were selected from the Mariners. Logan and George, since just checking in with how they've been up to since they've both gotten back from injuries. And then I think I have to talk about Dominic Canzone for at least a couple minutes. I just have to talk about him because he's been verifiably the Mariners' second best hitter to Cal since he got called up, which is insane. So that's the first part. Second part is digging into trades, what the team needs the most, in my opinion, and then a bunch of names that they're likely all looking at right now to address those particular positions of weakness, which there are quite a few on this team. And it's almost All-Star break, which means that's happening for every team. We're seeing who's going to be more of a clear seller. I think that's more important in the modern game. With this many teams that make the playoffs, it's a lot more important to define who the sellers are in the month of July, like right around right now, because trades I'm sure will start happening soon. No big ones have happened yet, but it feels like we're on the precipice of a lot of moves because there's a ton. Like the AL is just full of so much slop. Basically, like the Tigers are the best team in the AL, but then the AL East is a good mess. Like there are four, I think, good teams, and the Orioles are like a good bad team, but they'll still probably be sellers a little bit. And the AL West is just bad. Like the Astros are good, but no one else is really good. And so there's going to be a lot of teams vying for those three wildcard spots. And like I said, it's in the modern game. There's just so many more teams that are in a position to make the playoffs when maybe they shouldn't be, so they're going to be buyers. So the sellers we're kind of seeing who's going to be available. There's a lot of obvious candidates to get traded. There's a lot of guys who will definitely be on different teams come August 1st. The Mariners could use a few of them, obviously. But this also, it makes the trade deadline, it just makes it completely different in that there are so many teams vying for like sharks picking off from these sellers. It's a lot more competitive, but also at the same time, teams aren't really giving up top 20 prospects in baseball at the deadline anymore, unless like a truly elite guy is available with team control or something. Then you're not giving up a real top end prospect. Like teams don't do that anymore. That is not the formula. I feel like the Randy trade was a really good representation of where it's gone. I feel like a decade ago, Randy gets moved at the deadline for, like, from the Mariners' perspective, like a Colt Emerson, like a number one prospect type of guy, or Harry Ford, but instead he gets moved for two, back end top 10 Mariners prospect guys, and I feel like that's where we're at here. The Mariners are kind of entering this time with, once again, I talked about this last episode, once again, they need to do a lot, but this is a unique situation because they have so much capital to trade from, and it makes me a little nervous, honestly, that Jerry has this many assets in prospects to trade. So it's it's going to be probably pretty raucous next 3 weeks of this month. But I'll get into the trades later in this episode. Let's check in with the actual team first. They just got swept by the Yankees. That was awful. Awful series. Terrible. They had enjoyed beating up on some worse teams. Like they just come off a sweep of the Pirates. They had played pretty well against the Rangers. They split a series with the Twins and the Royals. All of those teams are very mediocre American League ball clubs. And then the Pirates, which are just a calamity. And then they run into an actually good team like the Yankees, and they get torched. It's in Yankee Stadium, too. And this pitching staff just cannot seem to find their footing away from home. And now they go to the Tigers, too. They go to the best team in the American League who are playing really good baseball. And it's looking a little bleak. And it's looking like this team is once again in that no man's land of 85 wins. You know, like it just looks like they're good enough. And they haven't particularly played well against the teams that are verifiably good baseball teams, much like the Yankees. Today, or yesterday, or 2 days ago's loss, the 10th, the last game against the Yankees, Brian Wu carried a no-hitter into the 8th inning, and then they lose. The Munoz crumbles. Matt Brash gives up a couple runs, inherited runners as well. Munoz crumbles in the 9th and blows the save, and then they lose on a fairly routine loading of the bases by Gabe Spire and then sacrifice fly by Aaron Judge that probably the ball got there from Julio to Cal so much faster than expected, and Volpe probably should have been out, but he avoided the tag and was safe, and they lost that game. Backbreaker. Absolutely backbreaking loss. 5-0 going into the 8th with Brian Wu under 100 pitches, tossing a no-no, gives up a single to Jazz, and then it just all snowballs from there. Munoz was tipping his pitches. The Yankees were all over it. He was also just wild. His worst outing of the year. This is the worst Mariners game of the year by far. Like, this is the worst one. They needed that. It was off the back of two losses where they lost pretty handedly. And to salvage something out of that series with your best pitcher going, Brian Wu, and he takes a no-no into the 8th and you're up 5-0 and you still end up losing. It's the type of loss you look back on in September when you're one game out of a playoff spot with one game to go, and you're like, hey, what if things were, an all too familiar feeling for this fan base. But the All-Star game's next week, so they'll play the Tigers. All-Star game is happening. Cal is obviously the starting catcher for the American League, but then also Brian Wu gets his first All-Star nod, which he deserves it. Way to go, Brian. Absolutely deserved. He's been so good and has honestly become my favorite Mariners pitcher to watch, but one of my favorite pitchers in the league to watch. I love watching Brian Wu. He's amazing. He's so good. He deserved that All-Star nod. Glad he got it, especially because this is coming from the players, if I'm not mistaken. So Cal and the starters was all fan voting, and then now the reserves is all like players. I think some of the league, but I think it's all players. I hope I'm getting that correct. But so that's sweet to see him getting recognition from players. Andres Munoz also, that one was not shocking. He's been phenomenal. I mean, this Yankees game was by far the worst outing of the year for him, and he's only really had one or two outings that were really actually bad this season. He's been nails all year, very well deserved. And then Julio also got voted in, and that was kind of a shock just because of the year he's had so far. I mean, he's been valuable, but he's been, especially since like the start of June, he's been a league average bat, and he's basically been a league average bat now for the whole season. Great defense, good base running, very valuable player. I think it says a lot that he got voted in by the players. I think that's really cool. A lot of Mariners fans on the internet were like mad he got in because he doesn't deserve it. I don't ever understand why people are like that. I'm super happy that he's an all-star, even though maybe you could say he doesn't deserve it over some other guys in the American League. Even like Randy probably deserves a nod more than him, but it says something that he was voted in by the players, and like the players aren't really combing over the OPS plus and isolated power and all that. Like they're not they're not doing that. So I think it is cool. It's actually it's cool that he wasn't put in by the league and was voted in by the players. I think that says something about him, and I think that is just a cool thing. So I would be celebrating him in the All-Star game instead of denigrating him like some people out there. I hope Randy gets in. I mean, this is like the week when All-Stars gets announced, the reserves of the snubs, which is the most ridiculous conversation every single year because most of the deserving All-Star guys get in. Most all of them get into the game in one way or another because some guys are hurt. Some guys are, quote, hurt and just don't want to go to the All-Star game, which is very fair because they can just get 4 days off in a row, go spend time with their families. I mean, a lot of guys do that. I wouldn't blame them. So most guys get in, especially pitchers. Pitchers who pitch on Sunday or even pitchers who go Saturday are not going to throw in the All-Star game, and they will accept the All-Star nod and then say, no, sorry, just pitched, not going to throw in the All-Star game, and then another pitcher gets moved into the game. Most of these snubs get into the game. So I hope Randy does too, because he really does deserve it after the year he's had. After the past 2 weeks, he's been scorching. He's at 7 home runs in 10 games now, in the past 10 games. Having one of the best seasons of his career thus far with the Mariners, which has been amazing to see. I hope he gets in, but those are the Mariners All-Stars. The Julio conversation is tiresome, and I don't really want to get into it. I don't have time in this episode. And those are the All-Stars, and we'll see Cal in the Derby, and hope he wins the Derby. I hope he can at least get some rest after the All-Star game, because he'll need it, because this team is, despite he's putting up, and might end up with the greatest season we've ever seen from a catcher. That is simply not enough for the aggressively mediocre team on the whole that year 10 of Jerry Dipoto has put around him. Year 10, baby. They're about as mediocre as ever in, 5 years? 6 years, basically. 5 years after initiating a rebuild. So, good stuff. Logan and George are back. They've been back, and the team needs them to be back. The offense has, on the whole, been better than expected. Has not really been the main problem. They could still be better. The problem is, they've been pretty good as is, but we all know they could be better. And if this team was a top 5 offense, which it's kind of unheard of to do with the Mariners, but you look at the holes they could have filled the past couple of years with good players, and it's feasible to be yeah, that team's really good. That offense is great. Imagine how much slack they could have picked up from the pitching, but the pitching has been just inconsistent, hurt, and altogether not amazingly effective this season at all. But George and Logan are both back, and George is looking like himself. Again, the past 3 starts have been great. The first few, the first batch of 5-6 starts were fine. The first 2 were bad. The next 4 were sure. He had that one where he went 7, struck out 14. It was okay, he's there. He's still in there. But these last 3 have been yeah, okay, that is George Kirby. 6 innings, 6 in the third, 9 Ks, 5 Ks, 3 Ks in those games, only 2 earned runs in the past 3 starts for him. And it's just looked eye test wise, the stuff is sharp. The command is sharp. It looks like he's back in midseason form after recovering from the shoulder problems he was having, which is huge for this team just to have him going like that. They are going to need it. They're going to need every single start they can get from him in the second half to make the playoffs, so that's very encouraging. And Logan has looked, not as encouraging as George. Unfortunately, the Yankee start he just had, he was looking phenomenal through 4 innings, and then there was a 30-minute rain delay. He came back and got touched up for 5 runs. And so I'm chalking that one up to I'm chalking that one up to rain delay. But he just hasn't been able to work deep into games. He has some of the best. No, he not some of it. He has the best strikeout stuff he's had in his career. Like the strikeout numbers he's putting up are disgusting. And since he came back, he's made 5 starts. He came back on June 16th, and he's gone 5 innings, 5 innings, 5 1/3, 4 2/3, and 5 1/3. Striking out a lot of guys, but giving up a lot of runs. The theme is just he cruises through 3 to 4 innings. He's cruising through the first part of the lineup and a good part of the second round trip through the lineup. And then after that, it just looked like he's lost steam. And those first couple starts back after an IL stint for almost 2 months, that's expected. Like, that's not shocking that he's looked like that, but he needs to get back to going deeper into games. Some of it is he's using a lot of pitches just to strike guys out, and that's been really effective. But he needs to go deeper into games for me to feel a little bit better about him. But his stuff looks really good, and if not for the rain delay, I have a hard time believing he wasn't going to go 6 in that game and give up less than 5. I think the rain delay just ruined everything. Can't say that for sure, but that's the way I see it. So both of them. Like, it's happened, the thing that not just me, but I did talk about this, but others warned about this year, is we had such a almost flawless pitching staff last season. And you come into this season, you can't bank on that, and it's been far from flawless. They've been great at home, not amazing on the road, but on the whole, worse than you've expected from this starting rotation. And while the offense has picked up some of the slack and been better than last season, you're now roughly in the same spot because they've balanced each other out. Where the pitching has regressed, the offense improved. Neither has done enough to make up a bigger difference to win more games than they had last season. So that's the tough part. It's the mitigating risk factor that I talk about with this front office all the time, is they don't do enough to mitigate like the risks of pitcher injuries, the risks of guys just not having it for a season. They don't give themselves enough opportunities to really, really improve upon the team year over year. They can this month, though, with trades. But right before I get into that and get into the second portion and longer portion of this episode, Dominic Canzone, if he continues hitting like this through the end of the month, I don't think they're going to trade for an outfielder. And I don't even think they should if he's hitting like this. Because the corner outfield with Robles out and Rayleigh was hurt, but he's back now, was like, I was always just, they need another one. I think Robles would be a great 4th. Rayleigh is kind of your 4th against right-handed hitting and 5th against lefties, but also can fill in at first base or DH. Good amount of flexibility there, but I still think they were going to want to probably look at one at the deadline. But now, if Dom keeps hitting like this, I don't think that should be like a priority. I think it's the infield and the bullpen that should be a priority, because he is hitting the crap out of the ball. He now, after the Yankees series, which he hit well again in, he's slashing 306, 330, 565, 154 WRC plus, and that's in 88 plate appearances. So still a small sample, but it's incredibly encouraging to see him do this after looking completely overmatched in the brief time we saw him after the trade in 2023, and then his 188 plate appearances we saw last season just looked completely like he couldn't hit a curveball to save it. He couldn't hit anything other than the fastball to save his life, so he was just getting annihilated up there. And now he's come into this season and he's looking confident too. Like, he's hit the ground running, and obviously that just snowballs into confidence and confidence. His K rate is 17%. That is down 11% from last season. His walk rate is down a lot as well, but he's being a lot more aggressive in the zone. He just looks more competent. Like, the eye test is matching up to these stats. Obviously, he just looks like a more competent big league player and has this entire run so far, these 88 plate appearances. The biggest thing that stands out for me is he's not even hitting the ball that much harder. We saw that last season where he can get into one. He has top end raw power. Like, he can hit a ball harder than most guys in the league can hit a baseball. So his hard hit like percentage and his max exit velocities aren't like jumping off the page compared to where they were last year. It's just the contact rate. Like, a guy like that just needs to make more contact because he was just whiffing and whiffing and whiffing on anything not a fastball. And so far, the contact rate is up 11%. I think the biggest and most encouraging sign is the zone contact rate is up almost 13%, over 90%, which is just pitches in the zone that he's swinging at and making contact with. That is the thing I will watch and see if this continues. His out of zone contact is up 10% too, but I don't know if that's as sustainable for him, just given the type of player he is. It's the zone contact rate. He can whiff at pitches out of the zone all he wants. For a guy who can impact the baseball as well as he can, he just needs to hit it when it's in the zone and be able to hit a lot of pitch types, and he's going to find success, and that's what he's been doing. So the zone contact is jumped significantly, and that is the thing I am focused on the most for Dom. My heart wants to jump back in on him so fast, like so quick, like right now. But my brain is still telling me like it's 88 plate appearances. He has adjusted to big league pitching. He is now 27, like entering theoretically his prime years athletically, and it's his third stint in Major League Baseball, which also is a good indicator of he's gotten the lay of the land a little bit. He's hitting AAA too a lot. So I think the improvements are there, but it's still 88 plate appearances, and I just need more. I just need more before I can do that and get hurt again by him. But it's that contact rate, man. It's the contact rate, because even the K rate is crazy. I don't know if he can keep up at 17%. Like, if that goes back up into the mid-20s, it's fine if he still is just crushing pitches in the zone and making a lot of contact with pitches in the zone. That's really all I care about for him. So I'm here to announce. Not yet. I'm not declaring myself all the way in on him. But right now, yeah, stick him in the lineup every day. He's adjusted to big league pitching, but now is the time where teams know this. There's an 88 plate appearance sample now of this season of him crushing the ball. Teams will adjust again to him now. Now is the pendulum swings back. Teams will continually try to adjust back to what he's adjusted to, and now is the time where he's got to lock in and sustain this, because right now he deserves the starting right field spot. Defense is what it is. It's whatever in right field. Who cares? He has a strong arm. But with him hitting right now as it is, with Rayleigh being able to play first base, he has to be in the lineup every day, which is a crazy thing to say. And that segues me exactly and perfectly into why I don't think they should really be looking at an outfielder per se right now. And we'll enter the second half of this episode talking about trades, the obvious needs, and what names come up for those positions. Okay, before the second half of this episode, Julio is not playing in the All-Star game. This is an update from the next day. And he said he wants to take a break, focus on the second half, and that has ushered Randy Rosarena into the All-Star game. So the Mariners technically have 5 All-Stars, which is, if you said before the season started that the Mariners would have 5 All-Stars, I would guess that they would be in better standing right now than they currently are in the AL West and the wild card and everything. But whatever. We're not here to talk about that. Randy, All-Star, deserved. It's funny that Julio stepped down nobly and then handed his spot to his teammate. This is probably good, and this feels underreported that Julio had that like armed robbery happen at his home. I don't think he wasn't there, but I don't think he was there. That happened early May. Happened to Luis Castillo, his house too, and some other Seattle athletes. I think Blake Snell and Richard Sherman too, if I remember correctly. I'm not saying that's why he's been so pedestrian at the plate this season, especially lately, since like we saw the April that he had, but it can't be easy to keep playing baseball every day after something like that happens. He's also 24 years old, so even more difficult at that age to juggle like life happening to you like that and trying to be a great ball player. So I hope the rest he gets is really good, resets his mind for the second half. Probably good for him just to get a little respite, and it's really going to be awesome to see Randy now representing the Mariners at an All-Star game. So wanted to interject before we got to the trade discussions, because that came out after I recorded that first portion. So without further ado, the second half of this episode. Now, what do the Mariners need? What do they need? Do they need to trade with the Diamondbacks? I think they might. But where do they need to strengthen? Obvious answers: corner infield. Shocking. It's shocking given all the massive additions to those positions they made this offseason. I don't think they should, I was going to say I don't think they should try to upgrade a second base, but they could. Shouldn't be a priority, I'd say. Like, I'm still right now, and this could change, fine with Cole Young getting everyday playing time there and trying to figure it out. However, if there's an opportunity to upgrade a second base, they shouldn't be held back to like do that, or even upgrade a DH and then have Polanco back at second base more. I can see that happening a lot. That's a lot more likely to me given who is probably going to be available this month to get traded than them getting a second baseman. It's probably more likely they get a DH type who can play first, and just have Polanco move back to second base. As bad as his defense could be, like as bad as his range might be, it's not going to be as bad as he was at third base. Or at least I hope not. But I think that's an option. Like, so far, Cole Young, I mean, he's looked a little overmatched. Looks like a big leaguer at times. Sometimes he does not. He at least has some prospect pedigree. Whereas, like, you look at first base, and they could definitely upgrade there from Solano, albeit he has bounced back in a pretty major way that we talked about in the last pod. But Luke Raley can play first, and DH. You can upgrade that position if you want. And then the other corner, like Ben Williamson, I'm just not, compared to Cole Young, I'm not as inclined to let him try to figure this out offensively just because of his tools. Like, he was a good hitter in the minor leagues, but didn't really get to any power, and you can see why. He doesn't try, really. Like, his swing is made to hit ground balls and, kind of a little bit opposite field line drives, I guess. But I'm not as inclined to let him figure it out offensively than Cole Young. Cole Young has at least, like, graded out tools that I like a lot more than Ben Williamson. And no matter how good Ben's defense ends up grading out, which so far has been great, it's been about as we expected, like a really good defensive third baseman. That's useful to have in your organization. I'm not going to say it's not. But I feel like the team just needs more offense than a great third base defender at present. Even just looking at you can get a good third base defender, even an average one. If he's above average offensively, I think that's more valuable to the team. I will say, though, Ben Williamson, he's right now, and he's probably going to end up being a non-negative WAR guy just from his defense alone. And despite being 20% less than, worse than average at the plate so far in his career, he is a positive guy in WAR because his defense has been that good. So I feel like it's been about as expected with him. Cole Young, you'd love to see him start to get to a little bit more power this month and even just look better at the plate. He's had his moments. His first career home run on the short porch, that was a home run in Yankee Stadium and also Yankee Stadium in Florida. But I can see him losing playing time if they get a more DH-y guy and then put Polanco back at second base more full-time. Or, I don't know about Dylan Moore playing more second base. He's looked terrible. But who can they buy for first base and third base? Who can they acquire? The Diamondbacks are going to be the belle of the ball at this year's July. These next 3 weeks, I feel like they have the keys. I think they have probably the most assets to trade. They have the most reason to trade these expiring guys. And it's probably going to set a little bit of a market for position players. Pitchers, I don't know, because there's a lot of other pitchers available, but I feel like they hold the keys to, it's Josh Naylor at first base and obviously Eugenio Suarez at third base. Those are the two of the better position players that are available, or at least look like they should be available. A trade for both of them would kick ass. Like that would be phenomenal. Could the front office convince ownership to go for it, considering they'd be taking on like some considerable salary in their eyes, even though it's, prorated for the last couple months of the season. They're not paying the whole year. Still, there's reports that they say they're willing to increase payroll, but like, come on. I'm not going to buy that until we actually see it happen. Just Gino, I see as a very, very real possibility, or just Naylor. Honestly, I think the D-backs really need like a super, super impressive package for both together, because I think they can probably get more by selling them separately, is my guess. And I think they probably think that, and I think they'd be correct in thinking that. I think third base is still probably the weakest position on the team. Third base and second have not been great, but third base I still think is weaker. So that would make Gino alone, I think, a lot more likely. Obviously, it would be Jerry reacquiring a player he salary dumped, and it's been probably the worst trade he's made in the Mariners uniform. I think we'll have to calculate like value that he lost in the numbers on that trade, but just pure vitriol that he's gotten, not only because Gino's been good, but it's because how emotionally attached the entire fan base was to him. It's just such a bad trade in hindsight. It was a bad trade in the moment. Everyone knew it. And it's looked even worse, the fact that he's raked in Arizona, which is not like shocking that he's been hitting well in that ballpark, but it's been awesome to see. I hope they can reacquire him. It would. I don't think Jerry Dipoto is like a sunk cost fallacy guy. Like, I don't think he's not going to trade for Gino because it would make him look silly. Like, I think he would just eat it. I don't think he'd own up to it. I think it would be some pretty peak front office executive gaslighting to come out and like say like, yeah, we got our guy again. Like, I did it. Praise me. But I don't think he wouldn't trade for him because of like the optics of retrading for him. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I think that's likely because Gino knows a lot of the guys on the team. He's hit in Seattle before and had success hitting in Seattle before. It makes a ton of sense. I don't think it'd be too expensive because he's a rental and the Mariners have so many prospects. The Diamondbacks would probably name their price. And I'm sure the Mariners, there's a lot of pressure on them to do this trade, I think. And I think they know that. So I feel like Gino is probably the most likely guy they trade for. But I can see Naylor. I just feel like Gino would be that little extra win among the fan base, I think, with just the emotional attachment and the sentiment of this trade. Hasn't been like the Gold Glove caliber defense we've seen, or we saw in Seattle, but it's been fine defense. It's serviceable defense for how well he's been hitting. Adds some more pop in the lineup. Vibes in the locker room absolutely could happen. Ryan O'Hearn, now getting away from the D-backs, Ryan O'Hearn is the other first base and DH guy who would make so much sense for the Mariners. He's on the Orioles. He's been raking, and makes a ton of sense for the Orioles to sell him. He is a free agent after this season, signed a really small extension for 2 years in 2024. His prorated salary wouldn't be much. I think it was $8 million this year, so it'd be like, what, less than half of that for the rest of the season. Left-handed hitter, rakes, like solid on-base percentage, solid slug, just an all-around good hitter, and he has been for 3 straight years now with the Orioles. It would make a ton of sense. It doesn't make as much sense from a package, but like, would the Orioles want position player prospects? Like, maybe beggars can't be choosers and they just have to take what they can get, even if they're position players from the Mariners. But like, would the Mariners trade? I don't think they'd want Emerson Hancock. I don't think the Mariners would want to trade Evans right now. I don't think they'd trade any of the other starters at the big league level. Would they? I mean, maybe they trade Brandon Garcia, who I was going to mention later in this episode. I don't think they want to get rid of either Cincy or Sloan. They're 2 picks from last season who are cooking pretty much in the low minors right now. I don't know. This one just makes sense from a fit perspective. Again, if they wanted to do him at first base, Rayleigh DH, Polanco at second base, something like that, that would make a ton of sense. With Dom raking in the outfield, I don't think you want to play Rayleigh over him right now. A lot of options. He's just a good hitter. I don't know if he's a 137 WRC plus right now. I don't know if he's that good. He's been that good this season. But this just makes a ton of sense from the Mariners' perspective. And then the other, like, just pure first base DH guy that would be a very similar re-addition, even though they didn't trade him away, would be Carlos Santana, who makes a ton of sense for the Guardians to trade. If you recall, Santana, the Mariners offered him a 2-year deal this offseason. He said no. I would like to go play with Cleveland again and sign there instead. I was so against the team not bringing him back after 2022. It made 0 sense to me then. It makes 0 sense to me now. He was a locker room guy. He was also just a veteran bat who was just a good hitter. Like, overall league average still. Like, that's a fine player to have on your team for not very much money. Julio loved him too. So on all fronts, it made no sense to not bring him back for a very measly, like, you could have done it like probably $10 million, just 1 year, $10 million. Whatever. I don't want to get caught up in that. But he's been pretty good since. He had a good year in Minnesota. He's been basically league average just about for Cleveland this year. Still just profiles as a very similar hitter as he's been for the past 5 years. Bringing him back would make sense. It wouldn't be quite as impactful to winning baseball games in terms of like his on-field production as the 3 guys I just mentioned before this. But again, maybe you acquire if he trades, if Jerry DiPoto trades for Carlos Santana and Eugenio Suarez at this deadline, the locker room, like, that could be just one of those things that just reignites the team entirely. Locker room, culture, vibes, and they go on a run from that alone. Like, that is entirely in the realm of possibility. And it would be awesome to see both those dudes back in uniform. The fans would love it. The team would love it. That would be amazing. We'll see. I don't know if he even wants to be traded from Cleveland, despite them not looking like they're going to fully contend. I mean, maybe Cleveland also just doesn't sell. They're not in it, but they're not like totally out of it because the wild card just sucks. Like, they're 5 games back, 44 and 49, and they're 5 games back at the wild card, which is ridiculous. But maybe Carlos Santana just says, no, I just want to play out my last year here, and that's it. And what can you do? He was the other first baseman. And then really, I'll talk about another third baseman briefly when I touch on the Rockies later, shortly. There's I mean, there's the Braves. I'll talk about the Braves later too. Like Marcell Ozuna, DH. I just don't want him on my baseball team. I don't want to root for him. He's a good hitter, so if the Mariners acquire him, there's that. But I just don't want him personally on my baseball team. There's Nathaniel Lowe, too, another first baseman. He's on the Nationals. I really loved that acquisition from the Nationals, and they just have been a terrible team. Just awful. He has had a down year at the plate, but I think he's a better hitter than 97 WRC+. Plus. He has been just a good hitter since he debuted, basically, with the Rays. So I think he's better than that. He's ARB eligible next season, so you have the option to acquire him, see what happens, go to arbitration, extend him for a year or two, or just non-tender and send him to free agency. So there's flexibility there. I don't think the trade package would be too outlandish for a 30-year-old first baseman who looked league average so far at the plate. His BABIP right now is like 30-ish points below his career norm, which is just an indicator. I think he's just better. He's just an above average hitter. I think he's like at least a 10% or better than league average hitter on a really, really shitty team right now. And also DH first base fills the Mariners' needs. Wouldn't hate this move either. He'd probably be cheaper than Naylor just because of how the year has gone. And this would make some sense for the Mariners too. So that is kind of the corner outfielders besides the one I'm going to talk about later in Ryan McMahon. But I think that would be a good route. That has to be the route for this team. That has to be what they're looking at right now. And then I think they need a relief pitcher. I think it's first base, third base /DH. I'm kind of roping all of those into. I'm roping first base, DH into one position, and then third base, I think, are the top 1A, 1B. And then I think the other need is a relief pitcher. I think they need a solid, trustworthy fourth reliever. I think Munoz, Brash, and Spire as your three guys right now, your best ones. That is a very solid group. That is great for a contending team. They've proven it, and I love all three of those guys, but I think they just need a fourth in between them, that group of three, and then the likes of like Bizzardo, Thornton, Vargas, Legume, whatever. Like, not that those guys haven't had their moments this season, like Vargas and Bizzardo especially, and Thornton's been better recently since getting his appendix out. But you just need another solid piece. Like Brendan Garcia could be that guy, lefty at AAA right now. He could be that guy, but I think even with him in mind as another lefty in the pen, which I do think they need, I think you still want to get another proven major league relief pitcher. So I think Vargas and Bizzardo are good, bulky, middle relief types. I think Thornton's fine. I think Legume is also just fine. But you need that fourth who's maybe not as good as Munoz, Brash, Spire. Maybe they're just as good. You need the fourth. There's going to be so many relief pitchers out there. So many relief pitchers move at the deadline in this day and age. So there's someone out there for everyone. I'm more skeptical about this team acquiring relief pitchers than I was like a year or two ago. But I still think they can acquire good ones and even make ones better. But I think they need to go out and not go for the scrap heap. I think I'd be very okay with giving up a top 10 prospect for a good relief pitcher at this deadline. I think they would really need it, and they have the prospect capital to do so. The first one I want to talk about, roping him in with Ryan McMahon, Jake Bird. I love Jake Bird. He'd be an awesome fit. There are a lot of good relief pitchers, like I said. A lot with very solid numbers, similar to Bird. None of them doing it in Coors Field, however, like him. But he is not only just a good relief pitcher, he's on the Rockies, and I feel like they're just kind of food in the trading marketplace. His peripherals back his raw numbers, but most importantly, he is quite funky. He's He's pretty funky. One of my core tenets of building a baseball team is that I think you need, and every great bullpen needs some funk, especially in today's game where we're using a lot of relief pitchers. He's a sidearm guy. It looks incredible coming out of his hand. And now you might say, like, hey, the Legume has basically the same arm angle. If you look it up, it's true. Very similar. The delivery is not too different, but they pitch very differently. And I think Jake Bird's just better than Casey Lugumina. No slight to Casey Lugumina. But I think the bullpens also should have so many different looks. So even if you're acquiring a guy who has a similar arm angle to Lugumina, they pitch so differently. Legume is a lot of forcing fastball, a ton of forcing fastball. Jake Bird, mainly breaking balls, and then a sinker. So you're getting two completely different approaches, even if you have a similar arm slot there. And that's completely different from the rest of the guys in the bullpen. So you get very just different looks out of each guy. But Legume is like arm side movement, four seam, sinker, changeup, occasional sweeper. Bird is completely different. He throws a sinker a decent amount, but then his other two pitches that he leans on heavily is slider, curveball. So, and then I'm sure the Rockies would try and move on from Ryan McMahon too. I don't know if they'd package them two together. Ryan McMahon plays third base, makes decent money. He's like a good baseball player. I think you get him out of Coors, and you say like Coors should make you hit better, but the hangover effect also makes you hit worse. I think you get him out of Coors, and he might just be a little bit of a better hitter anywhere else. His contract makes him a little less attractive as a like not great baseball player, but maybe if getting off of the contract for the Rockies lightens the package for Bird, or they get to Rockies to cover some money, or, you know, they just say we're acquiring the money in Bird for two decent prospects, I'd be okay with that. It would be a weird one for this front office specifically to do. McMahon, that is, not Jake Bird, because of the contract that he has. I'd rather have Gino and then trade for Bird separately. But McMahon, I think, would still be an upgrade. Even a marginal one, I think he'd still be an upgrade. He plays good defense, too, and he's just a better hitter than Ben Williamson has been doing it for longer. He strikes out a ton and has a ton this season, which would be a hard sell, but I wouldn't hate it. But mainly I want Jake Bird. If not Jake Bird, there's so many other relief pitchers. I mean, there's like David Bednar and Dennis Santana on the Pirates, both having good years. Both, I think, would be intriguing to trade for. The Twins have some really interesting arms if they choose to sell, which I can't get a good read on the Twins. Like, they're 12.5 back of the division because the Tigers are cooking. But they're 3.5 back of the wild card. They're 46 and 48. They're one of those teams that 10 years ago, without the third wild card, they probably end up selling, but it's probably going to come down to how these next 2 weeks of their season goes. If they crater, they probably get off some guys. If they don't, maybe they hold on to a lot of the guys that they have. Because if they do choose to sell, they have a very, very good amount of bullpen arms to just choose from if they want to sell any of them. They have just a great bullpen, very talented bullpen. Danny Coulomb would make a ton of sense. He's a lefty. He's had a great year so far. His peripherals are great. Even factoring in some regression of his ERA, still good. The team, again, needs another lefty, even pending like a potential Brandon Garcia promotion. And then Griffin Jacks and Brock Stewart, both right-handers in their pen, both in their first year of ARB, could be traded again if they choose to sell, just because they could probably get a good amount for them. I like both of them a lot. They both of those guys would fully satisfy my like fourth guy after the main three. They would slot in perfectly in that. Like, they can take high leverage off of Bizzardo and Vargas, who shouldn't be in high leverage as much. Maybe Bizzardo, he's been cooking, but I like both of the Jackson Stewart. Jerry could reacquire Justin Topa from the Twins, maybe, which would be hilarious. I don't think he's necessarily the impact reliever I'm talking about He's still good, but he's more in the other category of I'm okay with him as a bulk middle relief ground ball guy. I would trust the other guys mentioned before on the Twins and high leverage before I trust Topa. But it would be genuinely hilarious if Jerry DiPoto wanted to do a bit this month and said, I'm going to trade for Eugenio Suarez, Carlos Santana, and Justin Topa. Just bring back guys from the past couple seasons, get the gang back together, see what happens. Justin Topa was so damn good for the 2023 team. Crazy. That was when the bullpen lab was like, I had all my faith in the lab that year. But that's like the Twins are super interesting for that reason because I have no idea if they're going to sell. Again, I don't think they know what they're going to do yet. I think it fully depends on how they play in the next 2 weeks. Another first-year ARB guy going away from the American League to the Marlins is Anthony Bender on the Marlins. They're in great position to sell. They've been playing a lot better, but they are also in perfect position to sell for more prospects to try to build for their future. His ERA is phenomenal right now. Peripherals are obviously going to project some regression into that ERA, but still could be just a solid add as team control and arbitration. Would be a fine acquisition. Then shifting over to the Orioles, they have a ton of relief pitchers, a lot of relief pitchers they could trade. There are 3 on the Orioles that, like, I don't know, maybe you throw them in with O'Hearn in a larger deal with O'Hearn and one of these relief pitchers. Maybe you don't, but there's options. One would be Gregory Soto. He's a lefty. Bigger name, I'd say, than a lot of the other guys I mentioned. Having a fine season I don't think would be too pricey. He's in his last ARB year. Just over $5 million this season, prorated, not expensive. He's an option just for that other lefty if you don't want to put a ton of stock into Garcia and you want to get a more proven lefty to go, left on left near Pan Soto would be an interesting one. Then the other 2 on the O's are a little bit more expensive vet guys, but ones that I'm intrigued by. So Anthony Dominguez, he's a free agent after this season, $8 million for this year. So again, just factor in the proration yourself. Having a fine year, super volatile profile, like classic, very volatile relief pitcher, lots of walks, lots of Ks. He's an option too. I like just the fact that he's pitched a lot. I like a veteran relief pitcher, and I think he'd be useful. The other one, Andrew Kittredge, the other Oriole, most expensive option on here, $9 million this season, has a club option for next season, so there's potential team control here. You may see his stats and say, like, no way, for that amount of money. Makes no sense. And I will refute that by saying he does have a proven track record of a very solid relief pitcher since 2020. He's a very good, solid, maybe not very good, solid K to walk rate. He had a knee injury that he came back from in May. So the small sample size he's had this season is inflating his ERA a bit. He's only had 1 of 21 of his outings that I consider actually like really bad, which was 4 runs to the Rays. Otherwise, he's had 2 other outings, giving up 2 runs, and that's it. The rest have been solid performances. He would be, I think, a good add. I think some people would kind of gurp at his ERA a little bit. But small sample, proven track record for half a decade damn near right now. So Orioles probably will deal or try to deal those guys in the position they're in. I'm operating under the assumption that they don't want to trade Felix Bautista. But, maybe if they get the right offer, who knows what they'll do. And that would make me so excited for the Mariners bullpen. If you threw Bautista in there with Munoz, Brash, and Spire, that would be nasty. But I don't know if they'll trade him. They could. They're out of it, and you could probably get a good amount for him right now. And I feel like his value is only going to decrease as he gets older because he was just hurt. I don't know. More relief pitchers. Kyle Finnegan. He's an honorable, another veteran, $6 million deal this season. I really and everyone thought, I feel like he was going to get dealt last year at the deadline because he's again he's kind of like Andrew Kittredge, like he's just been a good relief pitcher for a little while now. He's in like not super risky to acquire, proven track record, and the Nats didn't trade him last season and then just re-signed him to like the same deal for this season. It would be insane to me if they didn't trade him this time around again, because of how bad they are. So he's also an option. Don't be surprised if the Mariners are in on him too. And there's more relief pitchers, but those I feel are the most interesting relief pitchers of the bunch that look like they should be available right now. I think as far as starters go, I don't think they're going to look to acquire one. I don't think they need to acquire a starter. Like, I don't think it's similar to like second base or even outfield. Like, I don't think it should be a priority for them to try to get a starting pitcher. Their pitching hasn't been great, but like I discussed earlier, Kirby and Logan are back healthy right now, looking better, looking more like themselves. You have four guys you trust pretty heavily as good major league starting pitchers. And then you have Logan Evans and like maybe Emerson Hancock. Logan Evans is much more interesting than Emerson Hancock. And you could do worse than that as your 5 starter to complement those 4. That being said, I wouldn't hate if they grabbed like a veteran for the 5 spot, but I don't think it'd be wise to spend prospect capital on a rental veteran pitcher for your 5. At least not before you try to address corner infield and a 4th like good bullpen arm. Especially because, I mean, you acquire that 5 and I guess you look at it as also somewhat of injury insurance because you don't know if Bryce Miller is going to come back healthy at all this season. Or I guess you don't know if he's going to come back and be good, let alone healthy. And the other 4 could still get hurt in some way, so that would be a way of hedging your bets a little bit. So maybe I don't know. There are going to be a ton of good starting pitchers to get. Maybe they go into one in a little package with one of those teams I mentioned earlier. Like, I don't think they're going to be at the top of the market for a starter because I don't think they're going to have the need, and I think other teams would likely outbid them because they have more of a need for starting pitchers. So the names like Sandy Alcantara, Zach Gallen, Mitch Keller, those are probably 3 of the more high-profile guys getting chatter right now for trades. And then like Andrew Heaney, Jeffrey Springs, even like type veteran lefties, I don't know if they'd be in on. I think the Mariners, if anything, would be shopping in like the Adrian Hauser category if they're shopping for a starting pitcher at all. But considering they likely don't have like a massive budget, I bet like a decent portion of the deadline budget would be put towards, Gino, Naylor, O'Hearn, McMahon, one of those relief pitchers I mentioned. Like, I don't think they'd want to do that. I think they're fine seeing what they got with Logan Evans. And let's say the 4 guys stay healthy, and let's say the suspicions are correct, Bryce Miller comes back and then is just out for the year. Even if he comes back and is bad as your 5, if you're thinking you're a team that's going to make the playoffs, your playoff hopes shouldn't rest on your 5 starter being good. You should try to improve your offense first, and then you don't even end up needing more than 3 starting pitchers in the playoffs. So there's that. That's all the kind of, I think, feasible trade guys and acquisitions that this team could absolutely make. There are some like wild cards you could really throw in here with like legit stars who are already being speculated about, but I don't know if they're going to get traded, and I doubt most of these guys are. But there's varying degrees of me not thinking they're going to get traded. The big one is Ronald Acuna, and this was a couple days ago because someone, I don't remember who, was like, oh, well, the Braves could trade Ronald Acuna. They're so out of it. I don't think they have any business trading Ronald Acuna. I don't think they're going to blow it up at all. Like, there's Ronald Acuna chatter because of who said that, and everyone's like, oh, the Mariners could do it. It also reaffirms, not even reaffirmed, I just saw some insane takes on the Mariners internet, and it's still so abundantly clear, and we've learned this for years now, that a lot of fans don't want to give up any prospects ever for literally any player. Like, I would give up 10. I would give up all 10, maybe, of the top 10 prospects for Ronald Acuna Jr. right now. Are you kidding? Like, the trades I saw people turning down on Mariners Twitter was insane. But I don't think he gets traded. Like, I guess anyone else on the Braves, you could be like, oh, they could be traded. They're very out of it. I just don't think so. Like, yeah, I'd love Matt Olson. I just don't think the Braves are going to do that. Like, Marcell Ozuna would be the one to trade. Otherwise, like, their guys locked up long term. Albies doesn't really have any value right now. But there are other guys locked up long term. I just don't think there's any chance they do that. So I'm throwing cold water on the Acuna stuff. And then the really interesting one, I think, is probably the most likely, like, star to get moved is Mason Miller. It's just because they haven't, like, signed into an extension or anything. I think the A's, obviously, they know this. They could get a ton, like an absolute sick haul for Mason Miller. If I'm them, I'm not doing that, but I don't know how they're operating right now. And then the other guy on that team, I don't think he gets traded, is like Rooker. I don't think so at all. They just extended him, so like probably not. Like the future is still pretty bleak, I feel like, for that team. They have some fun pieces, but the only reason I say Rooker is because he's 30. They signed him to what, for like 5 or 6 years, so it would be an awful look for them to just turn around and trade him like 6 months later. So it doesn't make that much sense. He's just like older and rakes. And I wish the Mariners traded for him last year and then paid him, but we have Randy. It's okay. But Mason Miller makes some sense to trade, just for the reason that he's going to be into ARB, right? Next year? Is that next year? Hold on. Live fact checking myself here real quick. Yeah, this is his 3rd year, right? Yeah. So he's pre-ARB. Yeah. So he's ARB next year. It's time for the A's to think about extending him, or like right now you could trade him for so much. Like his ERA is bad, but he's been very unlucky and hasn't thrown like a ton. Like 33 innings is a decent amount, but his FIP is 2.94. His expected ERA is 2.77 compared to his 4.28 ERA. You get so much for him, and because of the team control going into ARB, and a team would probably want to extend him, you get so much for him right now. That would be awesome if the Mariners traded for him. That would be insane. But I don't know. I don't know if that'll happen. Other guys on this list, wild cards, like C.J. Abrams and Mackenzie Gore. I think this was again. I think it must be like Buster Olney or someone. Again, it was like, could they trade these guys? Because they're really bad. These guys are really good on a really bad team. The future also looks incredibly bleak for this team, despite having those two and James Wood. It would be objectively so funny to trade either of these guys right now. It would be incredibly sad if you're a Nationals fan, but incredibly funny if they traded one or both, because I said this the other day when this was kind of making the rounds on the baseball internet, that the Nationals should just try to keep multiplying the guys they got back in the Soto trade, because they nailed that trade as much as you can nail a trading away a guy like that, which I still think is a loss, even if you break down the value of what they got for him. But you get James Wood out of it, who looks like a superstar, like a potential like MVP type of player, franchise cornerstone. You have C.J. Abrams, who is not too far off from that, being a shortstop and is a really good. And then Mackenzie Gore, who looks like I don't know. I don't know if I'm comfortable saying an ace. He's pitched like an ace, but like just a really good top of the line starting pitcher at the top of your rotation. The fact that they got that, and then even like they have a couple other guys who haven't really like, what is it, Hardian Susanna? Like he hasn't even made his debut yet. Like Robert Hassel was in that trade, I believe, too. The fact that they got all that, and yet they're still so bad, and they have almost no good players outside of those three, is incredibly sad. It's such a failure. I mean, they just clean house, basically. So I don't know. That's another thing that's going to be interesting. They clean house. What does that new front office do? They got to probably focus on the draft first, but then after that, it's like, what do they do? They shouldn't trade C.J. Abrams or Mackenzie Gore, but I'm thinking they should make a family tree. They just make a tree from the Soto trade. You trade Abrams and Gore for like 10 more players, and then you trade like half of those guys for 20 players. And then I said by like 2035, you have a full 26-man roster of guys you can all trace back to the Soto trade. Like imagine like the family tree type of graphic from that, like a coaching tree, but it's from the one Soto trade. He's going to have an insane kind of graphic like that anyway, just because he's been traded twice now. I don't think he's going to get traded again, but those two trades netted a lot of players, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future. I don't think the Nationals should do that, so there's that. But that's roping it back to the Mariners. I mean, it would be awesome if they traded for C.J. Abrams. That'd be sick, but I don't think they're going to trade him. That is what the Mariners should do. Looping back to, like, just slam dunk. Start it out trading for Eugenio, and then go from there. Eugenio and a relief pitcher is a fine deadline. I think there's no point in this team to sell. There's 0 point to do that. They're not going to. They're in it enough. They're too deep in this, like, rebuild, sustainable, winning, competitive window, whatever you want to call it, whatever the front office wants to call it. They're too deep into it to sell, and they're too close to the playoffs right now to sell. And they don't even have that much to sell. Like, what rentals are they selling? Donovan Solano? Like, come on. Mitch Garver? What? No, come on. It makes every sense in the world to buy. You have a ton of prospects, and you know prospects are not going to always pan out. And one thing that this org has gotten pretty much mostly right, and I'll give them credit, is the prospects they trade away. Now, there's still a lot of years to judge this on. Like Brody Hopkins, I think still is probably going to be a great Rays pitcher. But still, like the guys they traded for Luis Castillo, like those guys for Randy, I think they have a pretty good barometer for who they can live without in the organization from a prospect perspective. I think there's probably like a couple untouchable guys, but from my perspective, nobody should really be untouchable if the player you're getting back is good enough. Like, you probably have Colt Emerson and Laz as your top two prospects, probably are in their minds untouchable, and I wouldn't disagree with that. But if a good enough offer came around for an elite player, I wouldn't hate getting rid of one of those guys. But then you have like your next 8 guys, like Celestin, Ford, Arroyo, Fermello, Sinche, Sloan, probably not because they just drafted them, but like Tyler Locklear, Ty Pete, Michael Morales, Brandon Garcia, Teddy McGraw, who could be a damn good pitcher for this team at some point. All those guys, like, I think Ford and Locklear right now are the two really interesting ones, because if you're not going to trade a top prospect, those guys have both been hitting well in AAA. I haven't even talked about Tyler Locklear. He's turned it on at the right time to have that conversation of, is it worth trading him now that he's been scorching the ball recently in AAA? Do you try him again at the big league level? I think he's an easy guy to include in a trade as like your second or third prospect in that trade. He wouldn't be the headliner for a trade for like a Eugenio, probably not. But I feel like he's an easy one. Ford just makes sense to trade because he's there's still tons of questions about his game anyway, even if the Mariners held on to him. But then you have Cal blocking him. You don't want him to be a backup catcher full time. You want him playing a lot. He makes a ton of sense to just trade. As much as I don't want to do that, I would for a good player. Those two at Tacoma make a ton of sense. But even like Michael Arroyo, I would part with Feldman Celestin. He's a lottery ticket. Johnny Farmelo, like ceiling through the roof, but still interesting to see what you could get for him. Same with like Ty Pete and a bunch of their other, pitching prospects in high A and double A. They have the ability and the resources to make trades. They're definitely going to be active. I think we know Jerry without an elite farm system will be really active at the deadline to improve a very mediocre team. Let's hope he's convinced ownership to really up the budget for this deadline because they need it. A lot of those guys that I mentioned, most of them cost money, unfortunately, as well as prospects. That's the tough part, but it's worth it. They should be active. I think they're going to be active. It feels like imminent. It's going to be July 12th when this comes out. It feels like now is the time that things are probably starting. Front offices have probably been preparing for a while. Once the draft's over, it's like, let's go. Go. But that's it. That's it for this pod. Thanks for listening to this one. Appreciate it. Who do you think the Mariners should trade for? Who do you think they should trade away? Who wouldn't you trade away? I would like to know. And why is it Jake Bird? Why do you want them to acquire Jake Bird like me? I want you to tell me. But thank you again for listening. Hope you have a great rest of your week. And I will leave you, of course, with a hearty Go Mariners.